Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento, and I am so excited for all of us to learn from an incredible guest and fellow entrepreneur here in today's episode. This is someone that is really at the forefront of innovation in an industry that I would actually argue is very much crying out for innovation. And of course, so many of you listeners, and myself included, we all want to talk about AI. So I'm so excited to be joined by an incredible tech and AI founder. Let me introduce you to him. His name is Connor McCormick. Connor is the founder and CEO of Percheron AI, which is an agentic AI co-pilot that helps attorneys prepare for litigation, making better decisions faster and at a lower cost. With 2 AI-focused degrees and a decade of experience building real-world AI systems, Connor has worked across engineering, product, sales, and marketing in various companies ranging from seed-stage startups to Fortune 500 enterprises. Today, he's focused on Percheron's mission, cutting repetitive legal work so firms can move faster, close cases sooner, and deliver a better client experience. Connor lives in Encinitas, California, and outside of work, he's usually on a beach volleyball court. He's training for an Ironman, which means that he loves running way more than most of us. He also loves skiing, or he's in a yoga class. I'm so excited for all of us to learn from him here today. So let's dive straight in to my interview with Connor McCormick. All right, Connor, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Brian.
Heck yes. I'm so excited to geek out about all the things that you are innovating and pushing the envelope on, because you heard my teaser. I think that there are certain industries that definitely are crying out for it. But before we geek out about that stuff, take us beyond the bio. Who's Connor? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Yeah, it's a fun story. So going back to, I would say, the brief preamble is I got pretty lucky in that, like, in my undergrad degree, I just gravitated towards what was like the precursor to like what we know as AI today. So I was taking like machine learning and data science classes just because I found them the most interesting in my coursework. And then I kind of stuck with that, did machine learning engineering, software engineering, all the way up until now. AI is just the biggest buzz across the economy right now. And so, yeah, I basically started out as like a data scientist, full stack engineer, machine learning engineering, kind of wearing many hats as I jumped around startups. And then about, I would say like 2 years ago, I started getting an itch after doing a stint with solutions engineering and solutions architecture, where I wanted to kind of start building things myself. So about 6-7 months ago, actually about a year ago is when I started, and I started playing around with different ideas. I actually initially wanted to go and start working on an AI tool for case management for pathology billing. So like a revenue cycle management tool. So I messed around with that for a little bit, but decided it wasn't for me. And then I actually got into micro private equity as well. And so I was kind of moving around trying to see if I could like buy and acquire businesses. Ultimately decided that wasn't for me either. This whole time I'm working full time as well. And eventually I got to the point where I started my own AI consulting company. And then from there, Percheron bloomed from that. I'm happy to speak more about that as well, because there's definitely a lot of detail in like my journey there. But I guess just to sum up the answer to your question, yeah, I've been working in AI for a while and eventually made the transition to an entrepreneur officially, I would say, in October of 2025.
Yeah, I'm so appreciative of that overview and the fact that, Connor, it sounds like you've always been an entrepreneur at heart and you can't help yourself. Even in your full-time career, you always were tinkering and playing on the side. And of course, those are the seeds that plant into amazing companies. And so in the case of Percheron, I'm excited for you to directly introduce listeners to Percheron. But the one aspect of it that I really want to call out, and I'd love for you to emphasize and illustrate for listeners here today, is the fact that it's an agentic co-pilot. And I will say, as the host of this show, that we've heard that term agentic. Obviously, ChatGPT came on the scene in whatever year it was, 2021, 2022, whenever it was that it gained mass appeal. But that term agentic is one that's been thrown around for the past few years. And finally, here in 2026, I feel like we're starting to see the powers of agentic AI, not just, me talking back and forth with ChatGPT. So let's use that as the segue. Introduce listeners to Percheron, and what does the agentic side of it mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. I realize I kind of have to position my monologues and responses in a way that not everyone is super well versed in how AI works and everything. But I guess just to start, so Percheron is, as you mentioned, and gave a wonderful intro. It's a litigation co-pilot, is the way we're positioning it, or I'm positioning it right now. And essentially what that means is the legal space, the law space, attorneys, it's a very document heavy industry. They have to, regardless of what area you practice in, whether that's in corporate litigation or family law, you have to just parse through tons of documents. And so I thought that would be a good way to start tackling AI solutions when I was originally a solutions an AI consulting company. And I eventually found that there was a gap that I could build a product around. And so what Percheron does is it's not dissimilar to how you could use maybe a ChatGPT with a project where you provided a bunch of documents and you ask about those documents and then you ask it to do things with those documents. But there's some layers built on top of it that make it very well suited for an attorney and their workflow, usually prepping for going to trial. And so the way that works is you have a case as an attorney, or they like to call it a matter, and you basically have all the documents that are a part of that matter. So if you have someone filing a lawsuit against someone else, or maybe there's a divorce case, you have a lot of documents relevant to that matter. So they might be bank statements, communication records, other any types of documents that are relevant. And as the attorney and their staff, they're going to basically parse through those documents and build up their case, build up their angle, trying to accomplish whatever they want to. Now, that can take many, many hours to put everything together and get the facts right. With Percheron, the way it's set up is you can just ask the questions. It will, as soon as you upload documents, it basically does an indexing action where it reads through them, it understands them, and it builds its own knowledge base around the documents you provide in a matter. And then when you ask the questions, it'll give you answers, but not just answers about the documents you provided, but it will also give you these deep linked citations. So if you have a question and the answer is on page 74 of line 30 of a 200-page doc, it will give you the answer, and then it will bring you right to that line so you can verify the validity of that answer instantly. And why that's super helpful is when you're answering questions and you're fact checking yourself, you're building your case, or whether you're drafting documents, briefs, deposition, outlines, or even just filling forms, Percheron is going to basically let you do that a lot quicker and be sure as you're doing it that the information you're putting out is valid, which is one of the biggest complaints and hesitations I found that attorneys have when going into AI.
Connor, we've got to talk about that directly then. Since you led us there, obviously, I feel like hallucinations are obviously a big topic in the world of AI and LLMs. Talk directly about that. And I feel like you already gave some teasers as to how Percheron doesn't hallucinate, but let's go deeper there.
Yeah, and this will also tie into the agentic piece as well, because that's what is helping out with it being or not hallucinating. So they're normally with a regular, just if you're using a model 1-to-1, you're going to send a prompt in. It's a question, answer this question for me, or do this thing for me, and then it's going to read your input and it's going to produce an output. Now, when you start introducing specific prompting and agents into the mix, you can basically add more guardrails and more tightly define the behavior of the system that you're building. And so with Percheron, we have tons of guardrails inside the architecture that make it so it can't give an answer unless it has a citation. And there's like and then I guess sidestepping for a sec, on the agent piece, basically like we have a bunch of different agents inside the system defined to perform different tasks. So there might be an agent who acts as like, my friends like to call it like a quarterback. And they're the one who basically takes the request and they're like, okay, what do I need to do in order to complete this instruction? They might need to go and like search for some sources. They might need to go and write up some documents. We also have an agent that is specifically its purpose is to review the output of anything that is given to the user. And so along with that specific prompting and then some other just like logical guardrails, Percheron can't provide anything like that it's stating as fact unless it has a citation with it. And so that mitigates the hallucination risk because it's always going to come along with the citation and like the fact source, or it won't produce it. And that's so how we, I guess, mitigate the risk of hallucinations from the LLMs.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear about all the technical intricacies on the back end that you've obviously already considered and baked into the product, Connor. And I don't know what it's like to be an attorney, so I hope this question would be relevant even for an attorney. But part of where my head goes when I look at any sort of AI solution is the fact that it's really easy to get AI to agree with us. And so I can have a conversation with AI and I can be like, hey, social media is dumb. I don't need to use social media for my business. And it will say, hey, Brian, you're absolutely correct. Most people think this, but XYZ. And then on the flip side, I could be like, social media is imperative for every single business. And AI will inevitably agree with me because it likes having happy users. I would imagine as an attorney that we don't necessarily want an agreeable AI, that we want someone or something that pushes back and says, hey, Brian, I know you're looking for pictures of Connor speeding through that red light, but it's actually inconclusive. We can't necessarily say that it's Connor there. How do you balance that? Is this something, I guess we're getting into objectivity and subjectivity. How the heck do you as an AI founder balance the way your product treats that?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. And you're right. AI can be pretty sycophantic in a way. It is, I mean, even outside of just the law field, it's pretty tough just dealing with someone that always agrees with you. You never know whether they're telling the truth. And in this case, the way that we tackle that is, well, there's two things. One is by like just prompting guardrails. And the second is the way that we are actually positioning the product. So the first is the simple answer, which is basically, there are a lot of prompting guardrails throughout the agentic graph. So that's like basically how we've set up each of the different agents, whether it be like the quarterback, the drafting agent, or like the question and answer agent. Each one has its own task written out for them, but there are specific rules, which is like look for assumptions, call those out. Do not just agree. Things along those lines. So you're not just going to have someone like always agreeing with you and then you can test it by like flipping your opinion and then it just goes with you. Like it's actually going to be trying to find the assumptions and not just necessarily agreeing with you blindly. So that is the first answer I'll give. The second is that positioning wise, we actually are, and this also is reflected in the way that the product actually like works with you and responds with you, is it's trying to keep you in the driver's seat the whole time. As an attorney, as soon as you start letting like an AI do your job, you're going to like start losing your chops a little bit. I guess that's a whole different discussion of like AI and what it's going to do to the world. But secondly, it's like all of a sudden now you're relying on a tool to do your job, and that is like the main reason that like attorneys have their jobs is they've basically gone through law school, they've gone through all their experience learning their practice field, and they know how the whole system works. Percheron isn't meant to automate the job of an attorney. It's just to make it go a lot faster. Because in any given day, let's just say you're an attorney building a case, you might spend like a 12-hour day where 6 of those hours are just like reading through documents, trying to find a needle in a haystack, so to speak, or writing up a document where like everything that's supposed to go into it, and it's just busy work for you. Percheron is basically keeping the attorney in the driver's seat, but helping you like really find those facts a lot quicker and cutting down the time that it takes to actually get those results. And so to that end, there's not a lot of room for sycophancy with the model. Oh, is it agreeing with me or not? Because you're just asking for like very concrete like facts and very deterministic results in the form of like filled forms, drafted documents, and work product, things along those lines.
Yeah, and the fact that I love that you already called out that it is looking out like a hawk for those assumptions. It actually makes me want to plug that sort of prompt into all of the ways that I use AI is, hey, if I'm making assumptions, call it out, because it would be cool for it to see that, for it to call it out, for me to reflect on it. And then thirdly, I imagine that makes for better AI outputs as well, when it can distinguish between fact and objectivity versus my assumptions, my own personal beliefs. I don't want it to echo those back. So labeling them very clearly seems like a very smart and strategic step one in that process. Connor, it makes me want to ask though, I always think about listeners when they tune into business podcasts, they probably think, well, this business sounds so easy to grow. And of course, no business on earth is easy to grow, but this is an example where it seems like this is an industry that's ripe for innovation. Attorneys are equally motivated as you are, if not way more motivated than you are, to accelerate their case prep and in order to be more efficiently and more accurately being prepped. Where's the friction come from? You heard me call out a little bit of shade in my intro that this is an industry ripe for the picking and ripe for innovation. Is it one that's ready for innovation? What's the feedback been?
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, it's been a fun journey so far in that regard, just because just figuring out a like customer demographic and industry, how to sell to it, what the customers are like, it's all been so insightful. And I've only been at this for 5 months, and so there's like a lot more to learn, but I find that fun. I think that the legal AI tech is still, like you said, like ripe for innovation. There are so many people who I talk to. It's like, I feel like everyone knows an attorney, right? Even all my friends, when I'm telling them, friends and family, telling them all about what I'm doing, they're like, oh, I know this person who is a lawyer. Like, you might want to speak to them. And then I talk to them, and then they know someone else. There's just this whole network of connections. And so to that end, it's a little more, I guess it's a little less daunting going into it, because there's a nice gradual slope as far as like getting accustomed to meeting more people in the space. On the flip side, there are a lot of people who are very skeptical in the legal field. I would say a lot of them are very skeptical. And from what I've learned, there's a lot of information like rippling throughout the law field that is telling them to be very skeptical about AI and to use it in certain ways. And some of that is good, but then some of that is also not. It's maybe a little bit extra careful. And so, yeah, there has been like a bit of friction just getting people to, I guess, like not necessarily see the value, but be willing to take the jump. That's actually factored into my go-to-market strategy as well, like which market segment I'm targeting first, because like a lot of attorneys and law firms are not necessarily very open to try it at first. You might have to sell them a little bit more on like the safety aspect of it, which is definitely something that I put at the forefront of my products, having worked at a lot of companies where security and data privacy are paramount. That's something I threw in. So it is nice to not have to get bitten by that. But yeah, there is definitely a bit of friction as far as just who I'm selling to and them not necessarily being very eager to be an early adopter, because I do think the space is still not far along on their journey to adopting AI.
Yeah, well said. And listeners, here's Connor, who's in this space, calling out the fact that if you tune into podcasts like this and you scroll through your Twitter newsfeed or your LinkedIn newsfeed, it could feel like everybody's already a decade into this journey that we're all on in this AI era. But the truth is, we are still at that turning point. I'm really grateful for those real life insights, Connor. But I also feel like that answer that you just gave us really showcases the fact that you've worked in engineering, in product, in marketing, in all of these different spheres. Talk to us about how you've leveraged that career up to this point in all those different realms, because not every founder has the benefit of having all of those diverse experiences in our professional careers, Connor. It's why we always talk about, and very frequently on this show, we talk about how many different hats we all have to wear as entrepreneurs. It seems to me like you've worn so many of those hats up to this point. So how has that helped to shape your entrepreneurial journey?
I would say it's honestly probably one of my biggest assets. I mean, starting out, I've always been someone who I just am a very interested person. I find a lot of things interesting, and the longer I just observe myself in my own life, even outside of just work, I very often pick up new hobbies and will like climb the learning curve as fast as I can to get to like the 80% mark, and then you hit that plateau where you're getting diminishing returns, and then I pick up something else. So I'd like to say I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, but there are certain areas that I force myself to try and push towards mastery. And that definitely works in my career as well. So, I mean, starting out, it was just kind of hardcore engineering. I went to Berkeley, and a lot of my peers were in computer science or other engineering degrees. And so it was kind of all around me all the time. I would say one of the biggest shifts in my career was going into my first startup experience at Pretabase. And I joined them in the seed stage. So I pretty much every 6 months was doing a completely different role. First, it was machine learning engineering, then it was full stack engineering, and then it was like technical sales solutions engineering. And even throughout that, those are broad buckets. But I would say being able to kind of shift and just try new roles, not necessarily like still roles adjacent to the one before it, but new enough to where I was just always learning by fire hose. You hear people when they start a job and they're like, I feel like I'm just getting hit with a fire hose of information. I feel like I subconsciously crave that, just because it feels like I'm like learning and improving. And that is, like, as you asked, I think one of the biggest assets I've found, just because I feel like going into this, while it is very scary and there's a lot of people who are seemingly like way just decades ahead in their AI use, and there's a lot of people who like know how to do this other like critical business function way better. I've jumped around enough to be confident in my ability to just learn what I need to learn in order to succeed in that domain. And so going into Percheron, I basically look at all the critical business functions that are required in order to succeed here. And anywhere there's a gap that I identify, I basically just start hammering it with learning, where it's like, learn as much as you can about it, start trying something. If it works, great. If it doesn't, like, learn from that and iterate. And I guess to that end, that's just like how you should approach anything. But yeah, it has been one of the greatest assets, I would say, is being able to just be very flexible across my capability set.
Connor, hearing the way that you articulate that as well, the specific words that you choose when you talk about that topic, I can't help but go back to the fact that you're an Ironman. And anytime I meet people who have completed an Ironman or trained for an Ironman, where my head goes is, you basically alluded to it, is you talk about pounding the rock and you talk about just hitting it over and over again, because quite frankly, with a race of that distance, there is no other way to finish it other than just being willing to pound it. And you also loop that in and allude to the fact that it's all a learning journey and an iterative process. That's something that I really respect about your work with Percheron up to this point, and obviously looking forward, is the fact that Percheron itself has continued to evolve over the way. Talk to us about that evolutionary and iterative process, because I firsthand know, as the host of this podcast, how many entrepreneurs think that there are answers. They think that there is a roadmap. They're constantly looking for those answers. I used to be one of those people until I realized that there are none. Talk to us about the importance of that approach in your entrepreneurial journey, and especially if it ropes in with Ironman. Hey, I'll take an Ironman story or two, because that is some serious endurance there.
I love it. Yeah. I guess first and foremost, I have to say I can't take the full claim to the Ironman yet. I've done a half Ironman, and I think one day I will do a full. But for all those true Ironmen out there who have done the full thing, it is hard. Even the half almost, I wouldn't say almost broke me, but it was a doozy. So, but I'll get there one day. I'm just waiting till Percheron levels out, and then I think I'll take on my next challenge. But it is, I would say, very core to my personality, being able to just keep going. It's actually, I'll just throw in a little seed here for talk later, but it actually factors into the name of the company as well, Percheron, being a workhorse. But to your question, how does like the iteration approach, how did that work, and how did I get here? I actually feel like I've been iterating for a while. So as I mentioned back in the beginning, when I was trying to start with a revenue cycle management tool for pathology billing, that was all the way back early 2025. And I knew that, like, if you listen to any entrepreneurship podcast or any like information out there in the entrepreneurship and business space, everyone talks about how you just have to keep going. You know, I've heard before that it says like you basically have like 10 tries, and if you go through, like, if you basically try to start 10 businesses, one of them will work. But as long as you're like learning from the failures of the others. I don't know if I delivered that quite right, but the takeaway is that as long as you're trying and learning from the failures, you're going to figure out the way to make money through entrepreneurship. And so with me, I've tried at this point a lot of things, but I say one of the keys is like failing fast. So I would say this is the furthest I've made it on any entrepreneurial journey, though I've probably tried like 6 things at this point, but I've just pulled the plug as soon as I saw something that did not make sense, that was going to be too big of a barrier to entry. Like, I didn't have enough access to capital. I didn't have the right expertise. It wasn't the right founder product fit. It wasn't a good fit for my lifestyle, where I wanted to go. There's a lot of different reasons, but eventually I got to the AI consulting, and that was the first thing I did after I quit my W-2 salary job. And I was basically using that as a vehicle to find what I wanted to iterate on in a more like targeted aperture. And so I basically started by consulting with some companies in the commercial real estate space. I consulted with some people in wealth management, consulted with some people in law. And after, like, I've already had reduced the scope down to just a few industries. And then while like building out specific tools in each one, law was the area where I saw that I had the biggest potential for like iterating, trying new things. There's so much to do, and there are a lot of companies already playing around in that space. But I found that it was also like very interesting to me. So then when I went into that, I'm already right now on, I would say, like close to my 3rd iteration of the product, because I basically built something, took it to a few people, got them to look at it, and they were like, oh, it's good in this way, but like maybe not. It's not that helpful here. And then I built a second one and I had them try it. And sometimes they're not even telling you what's wrong with it. You just have to infer that by watching them use it. And so I would hear them talk about it. I would like see them use the tool, and then I would basically be able to infer like, this is where I need to go. And so yeah, to that point, I'd say iterating on the product and your journey and where like the direction you're heading, I would say is the most important. And one of my mentors as well was telling me that one of like the most key details or the key I guess not indicators, but one of just the best things you can do to establish and ensure your success is making sure you're keeping that time to value loop as short as possible. Making sure that like you build something and then you get feedback on it as quickly as possible, so you know you're not wasting any time building something that no one wants.
Yeah, ooh, I love that. Connor, it really alludes to one of my favorite quotes from history is Thomas Edison when he said, "I did not fail. I just found 10,000 ways that didn't work." And that ultimately leads to the right answer. And I really appreciate the fact that you've called out that your business model as well has evolved. And I'm convinced anyone who wants to create a product or heck, an online course, I think most things you're better off starting in the service industry because there's no other way than to get that real life customer feedback in real time, working alongside them, and ultimately just makes for a better product. So huge kudos to you, Connor. I'm also really excited to hear how you answer this final question. It's the one question I ask at the end of every episode, and that of course is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both wantrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and knowing that you are one of us, you're a fellow entrepreneur, what's that one thing you want to leave them with today?
Yeah, my best advice, I'm not sure how often this is said. I would have to guess that it's some pretty common advice these days, but it's just be willing to adapt. I had a colleague and kind of mentor in my past tell me about, it was some old advice they got, but it was like, be like water. I think it might even be from a book, but you're going to have so many obstacles thrown in your way in both business, entrepreneurship, but even life. And being able to just take those in stride and adapt is probably the biggest like help you can do for yourself. And so specifically in this world where AI is just doing so much and there's new capabilities that are changing the paradigm every month, being able to not get stuck in your ways, adapt, and improve your workflow and the way you do things is, I would say, the biggest skill, just being flexible.
Yes. Connor, I feel like I've heard that before about be like water, but never articulated the way that you just shared it. And really, obviously, I feel like it just compounds on top of the entire conversation that we had today. So it deeply resonated with me. And I'm so grateful for you sharing that, not only with me, but obviously our worldwide audience. And I cannot wait for listeners to check out all the cool stuff that you're building with Percheron, because I love reading about it. I love seeing it. You obviously on your website, you have the opportunity for people to sign up for a demo to actually see how it works. So Connor, for listeners who want to find all the cool stuff that you're building, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, you can find the website is Percheron or www.percheronai.com. And then we have a LinkedIn page as well. You just search Percheron. It's spelled Percheron. And yes. So yeah, find that website, book a demo, check out the LinkedIn page. We're happy to talk to you.
Heck yes. And listeners, you already know we're making it as easy as possible for you to find those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. We're also linking to Connor's personal LinkedIn. So if you want to reach out and continue the conversation, or you're a potential partner with Percheron, or you want to introduce Connor to somebody, that's the beauty of entrepreneurs coming together. So definitely check out the links down below in the show notes. Otherwise, Connor, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it.